Isabella stood beside her husband Miguel's hospital bed, watching as he slowly faded away. For the past 2 years, she had been witnessing the love of her life gradually succumb to stomach cancer. When they first received the diagnosis, Isabella remembered feeling as if the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. Miguel was only 38, successful in his investment banking career, and they had a beautiful 9-year-old son, Mateo. They were supposed to have decades ahead of them. The one small blessing in this nightmare was that Miguel's financial success meant they could afford the best treatment available. They flew to specialists across the country, tried experimental therapies, and spared no expense. But as the months dragged on, it became clear that all this treatment was just buying time, not offering a cure. Through it all, Miguel's parents, Sofia and Carlos, were their rocks. They lived just 20 minutes away and stepped in without hesitation when things got tough. "Isabella, we'll pick Mateo up from school today," Sofia would say on days when Miguel was scheduled for treatment. "Don't worry about dinner either. I've made extra lasagna." Mateo would often tug on Isabella's sleeve when she tucked him in at night, his eyes wide with hope and fear. "Mom, when is Dad going to get better?" She never knew what to say. How could she tell a child that his father was dying? So she would just stroke his hair and say, "The doctors are trying their best, sweetie." Isabella's own parents, on the other hand, were a different story. Her mother, Elena, and her father, Javier, lived just as close as Miguel's parents, but they might as well have been on another planet. "Mom, can you pick up Mateo from school today? Miguel has had a bad reaction to the chemo, and Sofia has a doctor's appointment," Isabella would ask. "Oh, Isabella, I'm so sorry, but we promised to help your sister with her apartment hunting today." "You know how Gabriella gets when she's stressed," came the typical reply. It was always Gabriella. It had been that way Isabella's entire life. When she was 7, her parents missed her school play because Gabriella had a cold. When Isabella graduated high school, they left right after the ceremony to get to Gabriella's dance recital, even though she was just in the ensemble. Isabella had gotten used to it over the years. Miguel became her family, and his parents treated her more like a daughter than her own ever did. So when Miguel's condition took a turn for the worse last month, Isabella braced herself for the end, surrounded by the family that had chosen her. The night Miguel died, she was holding his hand. His breathing had become shallow hours before, and the hospice nurse had warned her it wouldn't be long. "Isabella," he whispered, his voice barely audible, "take care of Mateo. You're the strongest person I know." Those were his last words. She sat there for hours after, still holding his hand as it grew cold, unable to process that her partner of 12 years was gone. Sofia and Carlos arrived at the hospital within an hour of her call, their faces etched with the same grief that was consuming her. "We're here, sweetheart," Sofia said, wrapping her arms around Isabella. "We'll always be here." That night, Isabella sent a text to her mother, "Miguel passed away tonight." Her response came an hour later, "It's terrible." No call, no offer to come over, no question about how Mateo and Isabella were doing. Just 2 words. But Isabella was too numb to care. There was a funeral to plan, a son to console, and a life to somehow piece back together. The days after Miguel's death passed in a blur of funeral arrangements, paperwork, and trying to explain to Mateo that his father wasn't coming home. Sofia and Carlos were there every step of the way, handling calls to the funeral home when Isabella couldn't form words and sitting with Mateo when he had questions she couldn't answer. The day before the funeral, Isabella was drowning in details. The funeral home needed final decisions on the program, distant relatives were calling for directions, and she still needed to pick up Mateo's suit. She hadn't slept more than 2 hours at a stretch since Miguel died. "I need to ask my parents to watch Mateo," Isabella told Sofia as they sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by sympathy cards. "You and Carlos are already doing so much." Isabella drove Mateo to her parents' house, rehearsing what she would say. When they arrived, Her mother opened the door wearing a light jacket, purse already in hand. "Isabella, this isn't a good time," Elena said, not even inviting them in. "We're just heading out." "Mom, please, it's just for a few hours. I have to finalize everything for the funeral." "We've had these plans for weeks," her father cut in, appearing behind her mother. "We can't cancel now." Before Isabella could argue further, they both stepped outside, locking the door behind them. "We really have to go," her mother said firmly. "I'm sure you can find someone else." They hurried to their car without so much as a goodbye to Matteo, who stood there confused and hurt. Once they drove away, Isabella called her friend Sarah, who immediately agreed to watch Matteo. After dropping him at Sarah's house, curiosity got the better of Isabella. She took a detour past her parents' house on her way home. Their lights were on, and Gabriella's red Mazda was parked in the driveway. "So that's the important plan," Isabella muttered to herself, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. They weren't busy at all. They just preferred helping Gabriella to supporting Isabella, even now. That evening, Isabella sent a message to their family WhatsApp group. "Miguel's funeral is at 11 a.m. on Thursday at Greenwood Chapel. Service will be followed by a small reception." She watched as the read receipts appeared next to her parents' and Gabriella's names. No one replied. The night before the funeral, anxiety drove Isabella to call her mother directly. "Mom, you saw my message about the funeral tomorrow, right? It starts at 11 o'clock. There was a pause on the line. "Oh, Isabella, I'm sorry, but we won't be able to make it. Gabriella has booked several tables at Emilio's to celebrate her promotion. It's at noon, and we've already committed." Isabella nearly dropped the phone. "Mom, this is Miguel's funeral we're talking about. Miguel, who paid for the repairs on your house 3 years ago when the roof collapsed. Miguel, who has been part of our family for over a decade." "That was a long time ago, Isabella," her mother replied coldly. "We need to focus on the living, not the dead. Gabriella needs our support right now." Before Isabella could respond, Elena hung up. Isabella immediately dialed Gabriella's number, her hand shaking with anger and disbelief. "Hey," Gabriella answered, sounding annoyed at being interrupted. "Gabriella, Mom says you're having a party tomorrow at the same time as Miguel's funeral. Can't you reschedule or at least push it back so they can attend the service first?" "No way," she scoffed. "I can't change the reservation now. Everyone's already confirmed, and this promotion is a big deal. It's not like I can reschedule a funeral party or whatever." "A funeral party?" Isabella repeated, her voice rising. "My husband is dead, Gabriella. The man who paid for your entire college education. That was ages ago," she dismissed. "Look, my promotion is more important than some funeral. People die every day." Then she hung up too. Isabella stood there in her kitchen, phone still in hand, utterly stunned. As if to twist the knife further, her phone pinged with a message from her mother. "Stop pressuring your sister. Her celebration is more important than a funeral. She's worked hard for this promotion." The day of Miguel's funeral dawned bright and clear, a mockery of the darkness Isabella felt inside. The service was beautiful in its simplicity. Miguel had never been one for elaborate displays, and the modest chapel was filled with people who had genuinely cared for him, colleagues, friends, neighbors, and family. His family, anyway. During the eulogy, Isabella spoke about Miguel's generosity, his kindness, and his unwavering devotion to their son. Matteo sat between Sofia and Carlos, who held his hands as tears streamed down his face. After the service, several people approached Isabella, offering condolences and asking about her parents' absence. "I was surprised not to see your folks," Miguel's college roommate said. "Are they ill?" "They had a prior commitment," Isabella replied stiffly, not wanting to elaborate. Sofia noticed her discomfort and smoothly steered the conversation elsewhere. That night, after everyone had gone home, Isabella sat alone in the living room, surrounded by sympathy cards and flower arrangements. The house felt impossibly empty without Miguel, the silence so loud it hurt. Her phone buzzed with a text from Gabriela. Hope the funeral went okay. Mom posted pics from my party. Got promoted to senior account executive. No condolences, no acknowledgement of what Isabella had just been through, just a celebration of her accomplishment, complete with party emojis. Isabella turned off her phone without responding and went upstairs to check on Mateo. He was sleeping soundly, clutching the teddy bear Miguel had given him on his last birthday. She crawled into bed beside him, finding comfort in the steady rhythm of his breathing. For the next week, Isabella moved through life in a fog. Sofia and Carlos came by daily, bringing food, taking Mateo to the park, helping her sort through Miguel's belongings. Her parents didn't call once. Not to check on their grandson, not to see how she was holding up. Nothing. A week after the funeral, Isabella received a call from Miguel's lawyer, Mr. Hernandez. Mrs. Ramirez, it's time to discuss Miguel's will, he explained. He was quite thorough in his preparations. Would tomorrow afternoon work for the reading? Isabella agreed and then called Sofia and Carlos to invite them. They'd been named in the will, of course, and Miguel would have wanted them there. The next day, Mr. Hernandez arrived at their house at precisely 2 p.m., carrying a leather briefcase and wearing a somber expression that softened when he saw Mateo. Your father spoke of you often, he told her son, shaking his small hand formally. He was very proud of you. They all settled in the living room, Isabella, Mateo, Sofia, and Carlos, ready for what she expected to be a straightforward reading. Miguel and Isabella had discussed his wishes extensively during his illness, so there would be no surprises. But just as Mr. Hernandez was about to begin, the doorbell rang. Are you expecting anyone else? Sofia asked, looking confused. No, Isabella replied, equally puzzled, as she went to answer the door. Isabella nearly slammed it shut when she saw her parents and Gabriela standing on the porch, all wearing expressions of exaggerated sympathy. What are you doing here? She asked bluntly. We heard about the reading, Elena said, trying to look past Isabella into the house. Miguel wasn't a stranger to us, you know. We have a right to be here. A right? Isabella repeated incredulously. You couldn't be bothered to come to his funeral, but you have a right to be at his will reading? Javier cleared his throat. Now, Isabella, there's no need to bring up old grievances. We're here to support you. Support me? Isabella laughed bitterly. That's rich. But before she could shut the door, Elena gently pushed past her, with Javier and Gabriela following close behind. We're family, she said firmly, as if that explained everything. Isabella stood there, stunned by their audacity as they made their way to the living room. Sofia and Carlos' faces darkened when they saw who had arrived. What are they doing here? Carlos whispered when Isabella returned. I have no idea, she replied, her hand shaking with anger. But I'm not going to make a scene in front of Mateo. Mr. Hernandez, ever the professional, merely raised an eyebrow before continuing. Shall we proceed with the reading of the will? Isabella's parents and Gabriela sat on the couch opposite Sofia and Carlos, with Mateo beside Isabella in an armchair. The tension in the room was suffocating. I, Miguel Antonio Ramirez, being of sound mind, declare this to be my last will and testament, Mr. Hernandez began, reading from the formal document. Miguel had left everything meticulously organized. To his parents, he left $200,000, enough to ensure their comfortable retirement and to thank them for their unwavering support throughout the marriage and his illness. We never expected. Sofia began, her voice breaking as Carlos held her hand tightly. Then came the main provisions. To Isabella, he left their house, 2 apartments in the city center that she hadn't even known he owned, and $400,000 in liquid assets. The apartments generate significant rental income, Mr. Hernandez explained. Miguel purchased them as investments 3 years ago. Isabella sat there, stunned by the extent of Miguel's planning. He'd insured Mateo, and she would be financially secure no matter what. As Mr. Hernandez continued reading, Isabella noticed her mother's expression change from faint sympathy to undisguised interest. Gabriella sat up straighter, suddenly paying attention. When the lawyer finished, Elena clapped her hands together. "Well, this is wonderful news, isn't it, Isabella? You're quite well off now." The room fell silent. Sophia and Carlos stared at her in shock. Elena continued, oblivious to the tension. "With 2 apartments and all that money, you can certainly help out family now. Gabriella has been struggling with rent on her place, haven't you, dear?" Gabriella nodded eagerly. "It's so expensive these days, and you have 2 apartments just sitting there." Isabella couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her husband wasn't even cold in his grave, and they were already eyeing his assets. "You should give one of those apartments to Gabriella," Javier chimed in, as if it were the most reasonable suggestion in the world. "What do you need 2 for, anyway?" Isabella stood up slowly, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "Are you serious right now? You skip Miguel's funeral for a party, ignore me and Mateo for a week, then show up uninvited to his will reading to demand his property." "Now, Isabella," Javier started, his tone condescending, "there's no need to be selfish. You're alone now, but you have all this wealth. You should share it." "Selfish?" Isabella repeated, her voice rising. "I'm not alone. I have Mateo, and everything Miguel left is for his son's future. Every penny will go to making sure Mateo has the best education, the best opportunities, the best life his father can no longer be here to provide." Isabella watched as her parents and sister exchanged glances, their eyes flickering to Mateo with something that looked disturbingly like resentment. "You're being ridiculous," Elena snapped. "Gabriella needs help now, not some child who won't even go to college for years." "Some child is your grandson," Carlos interjected, his voice tight with anger. "And his father just died." Elena's face flushed with anger. "Don't you dare tell me how to treat my own grandson," she snapped at Carlos. "We've been in this family longer than you have. And yet you've shown remarkably little interest in being part of it," Sophia replied coldly. "That's enough," Isabella said firmly, her patience finally snapping. "Mateo, can you go upstairs to your room for a little while? Take Mr. Hernandez with you to show him your model airplanes." The lawyer, clearly relieved to escape the family drama, quickly stood and took Mateo's hand. "I'd love to see your collection, young man." Once they were out of earshot, Isabella turned to her parents and sister, no longer holding back. "How dare you come into my house days after my husband's funeral, that you couldn't be bothered to attend, and demand his money? Miguel worked his entire life to provide for me and Mateo. He battled cancer for 2 years, and in all that time, what help did you offer? None. You wouldn't even watch Mateo for a few hours." "That's not fair," Javier began, but Isabella cut him off. "No, what's not fair is that Miguel spent thousands of dollars fixing your roof when it collapsed during that storm 3 years ago. What's not fair is that we paid for Gabriella's entire college education when you claimed you couldn't afford it. Well, let me make something perfectly clear. I will not be giving any of Miguel's money or property to you, not now, not ever. Every penny will go to supporting Mateo and securing his future. That's what Miguel wanted, and that's what will happen." Elena's face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful child. After everything we've done for you. What exactly have you done for me, Mom? Name one thing, one single act of selfless parenting." Elena opened and closed her mouth, unable to come up with an answer. "That's what I thought," Isabella said quietly. "I think it's time for you all to leave." The door slammed behind them, and Isabella collapsed onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. "You did the right thing," Carlos said, his voice gentle but firm. "Did I? They're still my parents, and Gabriella's still my sister." "Biology doesn't make family," Sophia said, sitting beside Isabella and taking her hand. "Love makes family. Showing up makes family. Being there in the hard times makes family." Isabella nodded, knowing Sophia was right but still feeling the ache of rejection that had followed her entire life. Later that night, after Sophia and Carlos had gone home and Mateo was asleep, Isabella sat down at her computer and saw that her mother had tagged her in a social media post. Heartbroken that my eldest daughter has become so greedy and selfish after her husband's death, refusing to help her struggling sister, even though she now has 2 apartments in the city center and plenty of money. Material wealth has changed her. Isabella stared at the screen, watching as sympathetic comments poured in from relatives and family friends who only knew whatever twisted version of the story her mother had fed them. Don't let Isabella get away with this. Family should help family. Poor Gabriella, always struggling while Isabella has everything handed to her. Isabella felt a surge of anger unlike anything she'd experienced before. This was a new low, even for her mother. Trying to publicly shame her into giving them Miguel's money. She took a deep breath and started typing. If Elena wanted to air their family's dirty laundry in public, then Isabella would give the public the full, unedited version. I've been silent about this for too long, but since my mother has chosen to make our private family matters public, I feel I must respond. 3 days ago, we buried my husband Miguel after his 2-year battle with stomach cancer. My parents and sister did not attend his funeral. Why? Because my sister had scheduled a party to celebrate her promotion on the same day, and they felt that was more important. For those who don't know, Miguel helped my parents financially many times over the years, including paying for major repairs to their home and funding my sister's entire college education. Despite this, when I needed help during his illness, even just watching our son for a few hours, they were always too busy. Yesterday, they showed up uninvited to the reading of Miguel's will. Upon learning that he had left me and our son financially secure, they immediately demanded that I give one of our rental properties to my sister because, and I quote, she needs it more than some child. That some child is their 9-year-old grandson who just lost his father. I share this not to hurt them, but because I'm tired of being painted as the villain in a story where I've only ever tried to be a good daughter, sister, wife, and mother. Miguel's money will be used for our son's education and future, as he intended. I hope this clears things up. Isabella attached the screenshots she'd saved, including the message where her mother had said Gabriella's party was more important than Miguel's funeral and several texts where they declined to help during his illness. Her finger hovered over the post button for several seconds before she finally pressed it. Within minutes, the comments on her mother's original post changed tone drastically. Elena, is this true? You skipped your son-in-law's funeral for a party. I can't believe you'd expect Isabella to give away property meant for her son. Those text messages are shocking. How could you say a party is more important than a funeral? Calls and messages came in throughout the evening, relatives and friends expressing shock at her parents' behavior and offering support. Elena tried to claim in the comments that Isabella was lying, but the screenshots spoke for themselves. Eventually, she deleted her original post entirely, but the damage to her reputation was done. The next morning, Isabella woke up to dozens of missed calls from her parents and Gabriella. She blocked their numbers without listening to their voicemails. Whatever they had to say, she wasn't interested in hearing it. Over the following weeks, they tried everything to contact her. Emails begging for forgiveness, but still asking for money, messages through mutual friends, even showing up at their house unannounced. Each time, Isabella stood firm in her decision to cut them out of their lives. They're never going to change, are they? Isabella asked Sophia one afternoon as they watched Mateo play in the backyard. People rarely do, she replied honestly. Not fundamentally, anyway. It's strange. I always thought I needed their approval, their love. I spent my whole life trying to earn it, but now you recognize your own worth, Sophia finished for her. And you see that Mateo deserves better than to repeat that cycle. 6 months after Miguel's death, life had settled into a new normal. Sophia and Carlos continued to be fixtures in their lives, joining them for Sunday dinners and helping with Mateo's school activities. Isabella had started managing the rental properties Miguel had left them, finding unexpected satisfaction in the work. The apartments in the city center turned out to be excellent investments, providing a steady income that supplemented what she'd put aside for Mateo's education. She also invested some of the money in shares of companies Miguel had always believed in, watching with satisfaction as the dividends rolled in. As for her parents and Gabriela, Isabella occasionally heard updates through the family grapevine. They were struggling financially, apparently. Gabriela had lost her job, and her parents were complaining about retirement costs. Each time, the messenger would awkwardly hint that perhaps Isabella could help them out. Her answer was always the same: "I'm sorry to hear they're having trouble, but my responsibility is to my son." Some called her cold or unforgiving. Maybe she was. But when Isabella looked at Mateo, growing stronger and happier each day, surrounded by people who truly loved him, she knew she'd made the right choice. One evening, as she tucked him into bed, Mateo asked a question that caught her off guard. "Mom, do you ever miss Grandma Elena and Grandpa Javier?" Isabella paused, considering how to answer honestly without burdening him with adult problems. "I miss the relationship I wish we'd had," she said finally, "but not the one we actually had." He nodded, seeming to understand more than a child his age should have to. "I'm glad we have Grandma Sofia and Grandpa Carlos." "Me too, buddy. Me too." Some people would never understand why Isabella had cut her birth family out of her life. They'd never experienced the constant disappointment, the lifelong pattern of favoritism, the painful realization that some people are simply incapable of putting others first. But Isabella understood, and more importantly, she'd broken the cycle. Mateo would grow up knowing his worth, surrounded by people who showed their love through actions, not just words, people who showed up when it mattered. Hi besties, thank you so much for watching to the end. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.